Welcome aboard Free Dive with Seapoint Digital, your go-to podcast for deep dives into the world of digital marketing. I'm Christy.
And I'm Anna Lynn.
Your hosts navigating through the currents of growth, strategy, and innovation in the digital realm.
We're going to talk. We're going to laugh. It's going to be a good time.
Let's dive in.
Welcome, everybody, to the Free Dive podcast. We've got a special episode this week because one of my favorite social media people is joining us, and that's Christina Garnett. Hi, Christina.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Well, so I think the first thing we have to get out of the way before we start this conversation is, what do you think the Hokies' record is going to be this year?
I think it's going to be good. I think we're going to have another bowl season. I think it's going to be fantastic. Brent Pry is doing a fantastic job of recruiting. We just got a top 10 recruit the other day. It's going really well. It's going to be a good season.
Nice. And the other question I think we've been asking in the office on the run up to this, what exactly is a Hokie?
So it's two things. So it's the Hokie Bird is a turkey. But what it comes from is a fight song that was actually created by one of the students eons ago, and it's Hokie, 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 High, Tech, Tech, VPI, Solar X, Solar I, Team. And so that's what the Hokie part comes from. But it's a Hokie Bird. Most people think about it. They think about this like really cute. It's my favorite mascot. It's this big chunky turkey that just like wiggles his butt and tail feathers and is just adorable. And so, but that's what a Hokie is.
That's
Nice.
awesome.
I think right there, like we could just end the podcast and we can value out.
Value added, done.
Value added. And maybe you've also recruited some Virginia Tech fans out of this podcast. I think that's the other thing.
Do it. I think if you're a Metallica fan, come join us. We jump up. We actually register on the Richter scale for making the ground shake because.
Are you serious?
We've done it quite a few times. I think we've done it like 6 or 7 times where it's like 60,000 people that are jumping up at the same time to enter Sandman, and it literally does register. Yeah,
that's crazy.
Yeah, it's awesome. It is my just I will die on the hill of it is the best entrance in college football.
Nice. I do love also, it's funny, I was thinking about you because I was watching Fever Pitch this weekend.
Yeah.
And I love the fact that like your social media persona, as far as the most encouraging, build community, and someone who might find you on Twitter or X in like the middle of March is probably like, this is the sweetest, most upbuilding person. And then college football season happens. And
I go feral.
Yeah.
Then what's funny is that you can tell the people who know me really well and who don't, because they'll see me like middle of November, be like, what are you doing? What is happening? What is life? And the people who know me are like, it's okay, Christina, it's just a game. And the other people who don't know me are like, do you need anything? Are you feeling depressed? Like, do you need help? I'm like, I need help, but not that kind of help. I need my team to rally.
I just need him to beat Virginia. That's all I really need.
Just like I just have a couple asks. That's it.
Yeah. And getting back to what I was saying though about I think one of the reasons why we're so excited about having you on the podcast is just I think internally we've talked about, and I think a lot of people realize I don't want to say it's an innate ability because I think you've really cultivated it and you really work hard on it. But your ability with social media, I think 2 things. One, to be an authentic self, because you do have a lot of people that work in social media community management, they work in social media strategy, and their own personal usage of social media. It's either such a plastic, like, yeah, they're there. They're doing the things, talking about community, they're talking about software, but there's that detach of their personal, who they authentically are.
Yeah.
And then you do that well, but in the same way, again, you hit Hokie season, and it's not a case of like everybody unfollows you.
I tell them to mute me though. I do warn them, like, you can just mute me for a few months. I'm gonna go feral.
Have you ever looked at like your numbers? Like, do you ever see that you have a fluctuation during that period, or
I don't
just kind of?
look.
Yeah, it's probably better because that's
It
again.
doesn't serve you.
Well,
Yeah.
I think it's that, but I also think that if I ever started tracking my analytics on social, on like my personal social, it would turn into work for me, and then I'd overthink it, and then I would be like, "What's my strategy?" And I'm like, "No, no, 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 no.
Mm.
It's just me, just saying whatever I'm thinking on the internet, which is sometimes great, sometimes not so great." Sometimes beloved, sometimes like, Christina, stop, like, delete this.
But that
At
adds to
least
the
you're
authenticity, right?
Yes, a little bit. For better, for worse, you get to see the real me.
So I did want to. I know we'd send some questions over, and we'll probably get to a
Yeah.
few of those specifically. But you know, give us a little bit of background. How did you end up in marketing? What drew you to it, and especially on the social side. Where the different avenues people go down. They may go to a more technical. They might go to something that's more high strategy, and it feels like you've really excelled and you've really made a name for yourself in the industry, on especially with social media. And I just love to get your background of what started your journey this way.
Yeah, absolutely. So I have a bit of a weird background. I was an English major in college and then taught math for 4 years. 1 year public, 4 year, 5 years, but 1 year public, 4 years private. And I had met my husband. He was an art teacher at the time. And basically, we'd be watching advertisements. Like, we'd be watching ads on TV, and I would fix them in real time. And I'd be like, that didn't work. They should have done da da. I would literally deconstruct in real time. And he would always say, because he had done graphic design, he had done all these things. He'd worked in DC for about 7 years, working with various agencies and working with different companies. So he knew what a marketer looked like, acted like, did the work of. And so he was actually the first person, like 2 weeks into us dating, said, "You should go into marketing. You actually have like an innate ability to understand what this would look like and what would resonate with people." And I was like, cool, but I never really thought anything else of it. And then we moved to Virginia after we'd got married and got pregnant, and so that we could be near his family, so they could be near their grandbabies. And I was a stay-at-home mom for a few years, and then had to re-enter the workforce and had to figure out, like, what is the new version of me? What does that look like? And so was really looking to determine if I wanted to go back into teaching or do something different. And one of the jobs that I had was at an art museum. I was a advancement coordinator, where basically I was looking through databases and public data to figure out who would be the best people to be donors for us, and how could we reach out to them, what's important to them, how can we align with those values. Basically product market fit, without realizing what product market fit was. And while I was there, one of my colleagues wanted to do an Instagram for the art museum. There hadn't been an account set up. And so she wanted to do that and wanted to know if there was anyone who wanted to do any other social media. And I said, well, I can do Twitter and Facebook. And I'd really just played around with them as just like general users. And what I wound up doing first is, I'm very curious to a fault. I was very much like Alice from Alice in Wonderland, for better or for worse, growing up. And so I did a lot of social listening without knowing that social listening was a thing. And so what I wound up doing was a lot of things that you're trained to know what it is, but I was instinctively doing it. So I was looking to see, well, how are people talking about the museum, and what does that look like? And is it positive? Is it negative? If it's negative, how could we even handle that? What would that look like? And so the museum in question is rather it's rather avant-garde for a very southern town. It's not just a brick rectangular building in a downtown area. It has this swooping metal roof. It's absolutely stunning. But because it is not in the vein of all the other things, there was negativity around the museum, even just for that. And I personally think if anything is going to piss you off, an art museum should.
That makes sense.
That makes sense to me. Like, be mad. It created an emotional response. Good. That's what art should do. And so I started thinking about, how can we play a bigger role in a city that doesn't love us back? And so it became, a lot of what I was doing was I started sharing, basically what I do with my own Twitter is I share a lot of the content that is in celebration of the city, because that's very much sending this message of, you don't want us here, but we are so honored to be a part of this area. We are so honored to be here, and we want to celebrate the city as a whole. And it started to work, and it started to showcase that it wasn't just this, hey, look how great we are. Hey, look at this. Hey, this is coming up. It was very much this ecosystem that we were building around the city itself, and how the museum was a part of that. And so that was kind of my first litmus test into how do we build thoughtful connections based off of the kind of emotional approach that we want. How do we want people to feel about us? And how do we build that emotion? And so from there, I was hooked. Because before I was very much like, why would I get a Twitter so I can like reach out to Simon Pegg and tell him I love him? Like, is that what Twitter is? And there was a time
That's
period,
what I use it for.
but there is a time period like that was what Twitter was. Like you would reach out, you would basically ping your favorite celebs, and maybe they liked it, maybe they didn't, and you just kind of go on about your day. And it's really evolved into this really beautiful space where we can all connect with each other. And so just did more and more and more of that, and was wound up being the marketing director for my local SBDC, which I'm a huge fan of the SBDC network. It's a branch under the SBA. So if you're listening to this and you've ever wanted to start a small business but literally have no idea how to get started, you don't know what it would take, you have no idea what licenses or what paperwork you need to do, what is a business plan, you ask, look for an SBDC in your area. They offer free consulting. They're going to walk you through things. They're going to give you guidance. If you need to hire freelancers or contractors or agencies, they have recommendations they can provide for you. Huge. And so was the marketing director there for about a year and a half, and got to work with small businesses, everything from doing our own marketing, but also really working with them. And clients would come in anything from, I had a dream last night about a small business. What kind of marketing stuff do I need to know? All the way to, get me out of this thing. I need an exit strategy. What role could marketing play in that? And so after that, I went independent, doing basically what I'm doing now, but for small businesses, and was consulting and providing advice, doing social media strategy, all these things. While I was doing that, I was brought on to create playbooks for an agency. And they loved the playbook so much that they hired me on full time. And so I joined ICUC, which is a part of Dentsu Creative. And I was working for Fortune 500 brands to build out social strategy, social listening plans. How do we approach things? And then the pandemic hit. And I was about as burned out as you would imagine I would be, because on social, you're paid to be on. You're paid to know what the room is saying. And so at any given time, I needed to know, Christina, read the room for me. What's going on? And you don't know if you don't know. You have to plug in for that. And so wound up leaving the agency after being burned out, trying to figure out what I wanted to do, if social was going to be a part of my life or just a smaller part of my life. Wrote a piece that wound up being featured in the Next Web on how social media managers are struggling to unplug in a pandemic, because we're basically being paid to stay plugged in. And then really tried to figure out what I wanted to be. And during that time period, I was talking about HubSpot on Twitter, and Brian Halligan, who's co-founder. He saw my tweets, looked up my stuff, looked up on LinkedIn, and reached out to Kip, the CMO, to reach out to me to see if they would be interested in talking about potentially joining the team. And then joined, and was a part of building this really beautiful advocacy program called Hub Fans, and did the inbound correspondence program, the after hour show George B. Thomas, and just other activations to really celebrate the customers of the HubSpot ecosystem. And then cut to today.
So I do want to get to what you're doing today, because I'd like to talk about that in a second. But I that HubSpot period, and I think that's, again, we're a HubSpot agency kind of in that ecosystem as well. What was that transition like going, again, you'd worked on larger Fortune 500 clients, but what was that transition kind of going from the outside, from an agency experience, to going in-house to a large company, a beloved company with a lot of, passionate fans? Like, what was that transition like going into that?
It's kind of like drinking from a water hose, because there is so much information, and the larger the company is, the more paperwork and documentation and processes have probably been put in place. And so you go in there, and it's so much that you have to learn, so much that you have to realize, is there a structure for this? If so, what is it? How do I find it? How do I move on from there? And so it's a huge learning curve. It's very much a huge learning curve, and trying to figure out how can you do the work that you need to do within the processes that are in place? And is that a situation where you need to recommend changes in the processes? Or is that a situation where the guardrails are in place and is like, this is perfect. I know exactly how to navigate what I need based on what's currently in place. And so, but definitely drinking from a water hose.
Nice. And then now, so how long were you at HubSpot? For a couple years?
Almost 3 years.
Almost 3 years. So, you've transitioned back, and I know you're working on some other projects. So,
yeah,
can you fill us in kind of what you're working on now?
Yeah, absolutely. So when I was thinking about what I wanted to do next, I was very thoughtful about like, who do I want to work with? What does that look like? And while I was at HubSpot, I had a lot of people try to poach me, and it kind of all followed the same kind of messaging. We would love to have you. We know you could do this for us, but we don't think we can afford you. And then something to the effect of, I wish I could just pull you out of my pocket whenever I needed you. And so I created Pocket CCO because when I looked at the work, I was a marketer who didn't want to be a CMO. I feel like, and it's not CMO's fault, but there is a pattern of the CMO coming in, and because they have such a short life cycle, they come in and they have to do something splashy so they have a legacy. And what that usually looks like is a bigger logo or a different or a rebrand or something like that. And it doesn't really move the needle. It just gets press. And that's about it. And so I want something different. And with the work that I'd been doing through social and the work that I'd done at HubSpot, I realized how much the customers mean to me and how much I really want to improve that overall experience for them. And so I wrote my job description. I wrote my dream job. What does this look like? What are the KPIs I want to be responsible for? What are the tasks? Who do I want to like direct to? Like, what does that look like? And then I put it in ChatGPT and asked ChatGPT, what is this person? Like, what is the title for the person that I'm describing here? And it said, this is a chief customer officer. I was like, amazing. That's great. And so I really thought back about the people that had wanted to work with me. And it was all startups and agencies who needed me, but could never afford me in a full-time capacity and wouldn't need me in a full-time capacity, but they believe in what I can do. And so my goal is to offer chief customer officer, chief experience officer services for startups and agencies who really want to nail the customer experience, elevate what they're currently doing, figure out where there's opportunities for optimization and efficiency, but also build out something so they're really building core relationships when they're talking to people, how they're talking to people, how they're taking care of them. And so that's where I'm at now. And it's been an absolute pleasure. And my clients are amazing. I couldn't be more grateful.
Awesome. And it just seems like it's taken off, and, everyone, on social, I think just really values your work, and, from feedback I've seen. So I'm glad to see it's taken off for you.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
I would ask though, kind of coming back to, like, as you were saying, what advice would you give to someone, especially, we've talked in the past about women in marketing, specifically, someone in the same situation as you, what advice would you give him? Someone maybe didn't do the traditional marketing college track. Maybe they, again, they did something from a different field. They'd like to get into marketing. Like, what advice would you give to them?
So the first thing would be curiosity is always going to be your best weapon. Always. It's always going to open more doors for you. It's always going to push you harder. And I find that the people who are the most curious also have the least egos. Because if you're curious about anything, there is an innate understanding that you don't understand or know it all. Therefore, you must be curious because you know there's something else out there. So curiosity is everything. Look at everything from different perspectives and realize that you need to get things from different resources and different perspectives in order to really figure out what the truth is. So the whole idea of, like, I did research, but that actually is like a little asterisk beside it. It's like, I saw a TikTok. Like, I need you to do more than that. I need you to do TikToks. I need you to read. I need you to go on HubSpot Academy or do SEMrush Academy, or, like, the internet is such a huge equalizing force if you use it correctly. There's so many free courses out there. There's so many tools that you can try. There's so many opportunities to really kind of deep dive into what you want to do. And the curiosity is also going to play a role too, because At the end of the day, marketing is the one role that you will not be bored, because tomorrow there's going to be an update that's going to completely change your entire strategy, your entire plan, your entire budget, whatever that looks like. Or there could be a variable event that you have no control over, and that's going to change how your customers are reacting. It could be that the banks, there's a startup bank that implodes, or there's the pandemic, or there is something, but it's going to change your customer behavior in a way that it impacts you, but you are not responsible for it, and you still have to navigate. How do we do that? And curiosity and really having that listening ear is going to be priceless in how you grow. Second, I would say, and this is going to get me in hot water, but it needs to be said, I think the non-linear marketers are the better marketers because it found them, not the other way around. Usually I find that if the work finds you, it's because there is something innate in you that drew you to it. So you have this natural capacity. So you didn't go into marketing because you thought it was easy, or you thought it was cute, or you thought it was sexy, or it was lucrative. You got into it because there is a part of you that just naturally connected to it. And so I think that there's a lot of the work that you would do intuitively, like what I did I was doing social listening. I didn't know that was a thing. I didn't know that was like its whole sort of methodology until later. But I was intuitively doing it because that's what made sense to me. And I find that non-linear path marketers do a lot of that intuitive stuff because they just naturally have that mindset for, how would I want to learn about this? What would I want to do next? Here's how I can do that. And so I find that they do a really great job because they're naturally attuned to what that looks like.
100% agree with you. I come from a non-linear background as well. And it's interesting because like sharing experiences at conferences, you really do see kind of that pattern of those that and there's strengths and weaknesses both sides,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
that same feedback of like that passion and that desire for actual marketing comes through, I think, in those situations.
Completely agree.
And I think I think we're coming up on time on here, but I think the other question I got for you is, what do you think are going to be the big trends for 2025 as far as, especially in the social landscape?
I think AI is still going to play a huge role, but I think you're going to see more pushback for AI. And I think I think what AI is actually going to do is it's going to create a lot of damage, but it's also going to create a lot more need for humanity. And so I think you're going to see a bigger push for authenticity. You're going to see a bigger push for people being unapologetically human and trying to reconnect in a way that feels special. Because in a world where AI can basically do everything, it's the human touch that's going to differentiate. That's where the moat's going to live. And so for people to say, and I think that's also where conferences will play a huge role. You've seen those sessions before. You've seen the webinars. You've listened to the podcast. Most people are not going to conferences anymore and haven't been going to conferences since the pandemic for the sessions. They're not going there to learn. They're going there to connect. I want to see so-and-so. I haven't seen them in forever. I can't wait to have drinks with so-and-so. It's the human touch. And so I think next year, the human touch is going to be absolutely paramount in how we talk to each other, how we connect to each other, who we trust. And I think AI is playing a huge role in that, but not in the way that it was intended to.
Do you think you're going to see more emphasis on video in that regard, as far as personal video?
I think you are, but I think also because there are AI videos, I think you're going to see a separation of what that looks like. And I think what's also going to be interesting is, I think on LinkedIn specifically, you're going to see the less polish. And we're already starting to see this. Like the TikTok generation really kind of established that raw, actually, it does better than something that's like hyper polished and branded. And I think we're going to see that on LinkedIn too, as more and more people are trying to be influencers. As marketers, we know that packaging matters, but there is such a thing as too much packaging. It's too perfect. I can see the filter on your face. I can see that that's not what you really look like. And I need to see the human behind the mask that you've kind of created for yourself. I think that's going to be huge. I think you're going to see more and more video, but I think you're going to see more raw video.
Yeah, I agree with you. It's funny. I think the push with AI is because everything is so perfect and so homogenized, and we've gotten to this point of filters that it's almost the imperfections and the blemishes on
100%.
us is what shows authenticity now in the
Completely agree.
in the filtered world.
Well, think about it this way.
Yeah.
AI is aggregating all of this stuff from the internet, and then you're having it write for you, you're having it do all this stuff. So what it's doing is it's aggregating content on the outcome side too, to the point where everything is beige. So in a beige world, be very bold. It's the easiest way to stand out.
Time for some chartreuse.
Yes.
Well, we really appreciate you being on today. Any parting words, especially for newer marketers, before we sign off today?
I would just say, listen. Go in there and listen. Go in Reddit, see what people are talking about. Go in Quora. What are people talking about? Twitter, LinkedIn, all these things. Look and see. Don't just dive in first. Do a lot of listening and see what kind of conversations are being had. The best marketers can read the room, and there's no degree for that. There's no numbers of years of experience for that. Read the room. Once you know how to read the room, you're priceless.
Awesome. So again, we've got Christina Garnett on with us today. And if you don't follow her on Twitter or X, do
I'm not
so,
calling it that.
because I don't call it X either. It's like a Prince thing, like the social media formerly known as Twitter.
Yeah.
Find her on Twitter. She's delightful and full of insights, and also is a great aid in building community in the marketing world. So there's a lot of value in that, in following her, and for meeting other and finding other really, really smart people. She helps to expose. So another thing I really appreciate about her work that she does in the community for marketing. So thank you so much for being on with us today.
Thanks for having me.
It's the end.
No, it's not. There's more.
There's always more.
Don't be sad. You can catch our full video interviews on our YouTube channel. Come find us.
And don't forget to subscribe, like, and share with your friends so that we're not sad.
And follow us on TikTok.
And Instagram.
It'll make your day happier, promise.
And we'll know if you do. Until next time.